Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
This happened fairly recently. I was trying to get a train to the city for a night of drinking with some friends. Unfortunately, the trains weren't running to the city center that day for some reason, so they had a replacement bus service instead. So I then went to go looking for where they had hidden the replacement buses in the train station, and after a while, it seemed like I was on the right track. But just as I had found a very promising corridor, I heard running footsteps coming from behind me. I glanced around to find an Arabic man sprinting to a stop beside me. I know that he was Arabic because he tried to offer to teach me Arabic while I was trapped with him later on. He asked me if I knew where the replacement bus service was. I replied that I was probably just as lost as he was, and that I was trying to find it myself. I thought that that would be the end of our interaction, but he continued walking beside me. Fair enough, I thought. We're both looking for the same thing, so maybe he thinks that we stand a better chance of finding it together. I wish I had turned around and darted into a bathroom or something. It turned out that the corridor did lead to the replacement bus, and the driver was standing outside the doors. He assured us that we had plenty of time and that we were the first ones here. He opened the doors to let us in, and the bus was completely empty. I decided to take a random seat in the middle and then huddled up next to the window, ready to put my headphones on. And where does this guy choose to sit in the completely empty bus? Well, right next to me, trapping me in the row of seats. I thought that it was a little weird at that time, but I figured no harm would come of it. He asked me why I'm headed to the city center. I tell him that I'm meeting friends for a girls' night out, and then very pointedly put my headphones on and then start finding a good song to listen to. He insists that he should join us, but I tell him that it's girls only and that I don't really know him. He answered that we could get to know each other and that he'll buy me a drink. I tell him no thanks and that I just wanted to see my friends today. The bus has gotten moving at this point, and there were a few others on board. From there, he then proceeds to badger me with questions, all of which I ignore or give one-word answers to. After a bunch of them, my replies became variations of, "I just want to listen to my music now," and "I'm not interested in talking, I'm sorry." He then starts complimenting my body, telling me that he thinks that I'm beautiful and repeating over and over and over again, "I really like you." My only responses now are, "Leave me alone," every so often, and I am visibly shrinking away from him as he's leaning closer. The bus driver doesn't seem to know where he's going for his next stop, and the city center is ages away, so I'm trapped in the seat and starting to really panic. He then starts stepping up to "I love yous," and then he leans right up to me making kissing sounds with his lips. That was the moment that my hero intervened. It was a man around my age, sitting a few seats back. I'll quote what I can remember of the conversation. For my hero, let's call him Hero, and for the guy, let's call him Creep. My hero said, "Excuse me, mate, she asked you multiple times to leave her alone." The Creep answered, "Fuck off." My hero then said, "You need to move away from her. You're clearly bothering her." The Creep angrily replied, "Mind your own business, we're fine." My hero then talks to me and asks, "Do you want to move?" And me, practically pinned against the window getting pretty scared, I answered yeah. But then the Creep gets up and then storms up to the man and asks, "Do you want to fight? Do you want to fucking go right now?" And then my hero says, "Nah, I'd rather you control yourself and leave her alone." The creep is visibly ready to start throwing punches when the driver calls back if there's a problem and if he needs to kick anyone off the bus. The creep quietly says no and then moves to a few seats behind my hero, much to my relief. I mouth several thank yous to my hero, who just smiles like it was no big deal. The creep tried following me off the bus, but my friends met with me, so he then walks off. And I'm so glad that my hero intervened when he did. So long story short, there was this man who looked to be in his 30s staring me down at the train station on my way home from school a couple of weeks ago. Initially, I, a 17-year-old female, had been waiting near the station exit because it was absolutely pissing it down outside and I didn't have an umbrella on hand. I ended up waiting for a while after the raining had stopped because that man, who had waited near for what I presumed to be the same reason, had been staring at me the entire time. I hoped that he would leave before me, but seeing as he didn't, I eventually brushed it off and I left the station. Of course, because I wouldn't be writing this if he hadn't. The man followed me. He practically chased me down and managed to catch up to me at a red light. At this point, I was alarmed because the route that I have to take to reach my house is usually vacant and quite obscured, and just generally not a safe area to go through alone. Immediately, he started talking to me. He was offering to take me to lunch and buy me things. I was polite but very clearly dismissive. And while he talked to me, I quickly decided to run in the opposite direction to reach one of the main streets where there'd likely be more people so that I wouldn't have to be alone with him any longer. He followed me there too and kept insisting on buying me an umbrella even though it had stopped raining. I politely declined and I was walking faster with every moment that passed, but he just seemed to get frustrated and then followed me the whole time up until I reached a store. He didn't stop there, of course. He walked in the store with me and the cashier seemed oblivious to how uncomfortable I was. I tried to distance myself by going through one of the aisles, which was quite narrow, and the guy took that as an opportunity to grab me by my waist and then run his hands down my lower back, and I just froze. At that point, I felt defeated. I decided to play along, so I told him that I'd write down his number at the exit, and he seemed happy with that. He kept touching me, and I felt disgusted just at the memory of it. I'm not even sure how many times he'd had his hands around me in the span of a few minutes. He'd hugged me, and at some point, grabbed me by my hands and wrist, and I just barely dodged the kiss. Luckily, I seemed convincing enough and he didn't follow me all the way to my house like he was insisting on. I didn't see him again for a week, so I started to let my guard down, but as of a few days ago, I keep finding him sat in front of the train station at the time that I come back from school. I had seen him for 4 days in a row now, and although it's probably a coincidence, and that I shouldn't think much of it, it's a really unpleasant reminder. Every time that I see him, he's sitting on the bench on the street that I have to cross, and he just stares at me. And it is beyond creepy. The story dates back to spring of 2016. At that time, I was in my late 20s. I was young and fit with very long blonde hair, a total hippie chick that had quit her job to travel the US with my ex at that time. This was pre-pandemic, before the van life or tiny home movement really took off. We left our home in the Midwest of January that year after holiday celebrations, saying goodbye to our friends and our family. And by some time in April or early May, we made it to southern Texas and decided that we wanted to check out Padre Island National Seashore. For those of you unfamiliar with Padre Island, it is a seashore that you can drive right onto with your vehicle. My now ex and I were in a 26-foot Class C 1976 Chevy motorhome. We drove into the island at nighttime, and waking up the next morning was the most insane and phenomenal experience. The ocean was a mere 15 feet away. I mean, the visual was so breathtaking that I will never forget it. We arrived on a Thursday or Friday, and the beach was beyond packed. Another thing for people unfamiliar with Padre, it is where many Texans, high schoolers and college kids mainly, flock for their spring break. Spring break was just the week prior to when we got there, or maybe still going on, but either way, it was busy and we had an awesome weekend partying away. During this weekend, we noticed that workers for the park would often drive down the beach. They are very protective of their sea turtle population there and would slowly drive by in marked vehicles a few times a day. By Monday morning, we awoke to find the entire island emptied out. When I tell you, we were literally the only ones, both when you look left or right, we were the only ones for what seemed like miles. But still, it was a gorgeous morning, so I walked the dog quickly, and then I came inside to sit at our pop-up dining table to do some journaling. My ex was asleep on the very back couch, and we were backed in with a windshield facing the ocean, and so of course, I took a seat looking towards the beautiful view. Maybe 15 minutes after I sat down to journal, a gray beat-up pickup truck drove by kinda quickly heading towards the direction of the park entrance. That was the first activity that I had seen on the island that morning, and I thought nothing of it. However, maybe 5 to 10 minutes later, the same truck came driving back past our RV, and this time, much slower. The man driving the pickup was going so slow in fact that we made eye contact for several seconds as he went back by. He also seemed to drive closer to our vehicle in order to better see inside. Well, alarm bells should have been ringing at this point, but I kind of just shrugged it off. I was very much in my free spirit phase, and I was not easily put off. This is where it really gets creepy. So, obviously, this guy needed to turn back around since he was driving away from the park entrance again. But I was honestly minding my own business. I kind of immediately put him out of my mind. But yes, several minutes later, maybe around 10 minutes, the man came back. But this time, he pulled directly up to our RV with his truck, essentially nose to nose at a 45-degree angle blocking us in. It was at this point that my heart dropped and I began to get scared. I screamed my ex's name immediately, and up he jumped from the couch. I know he could hear the panic in my voice, and I will never forget how quickly he got up and how he had his arms spread across while he ducked down to see through the windshield. He was 6'5" and very bearded, and I'm 1000% sure that he was the only reason that the man in the gray beat-up truck sped off like a bat out of hell. It took several minutes for my heart rate to return to normal. My ex and I just looked at each other, and that was the most unusual encounter in our trip. Surprisingly, we stayed another week after that in the same spot. The idea never entered my head that the man could bring reinforcement and come back for me or us. I was so very fearless and naive back then. Anyway, it wasn't until later that day that another fact dawned on me. When my ex and I had arrived over the weekend, we only pulled out one camping chair. That one camping chair was in plain sight next to our RV outside. Prior to this spot, we had never done that. We always got both chairs out, but we ended up using driftwood to sit on when we had our bonfires. So, that was the nail in the coffin for me. The scary man in the gray truck absolutely thought that I was a young girl all alone, and I still wonder to this day, almost 10 years later, what all he had in mind for me that morning. I'm a 19-year-old female. At that time, I worked at a resort. We closed at around 10 p.m. and the bus showed up at 10:20 p.m. I'm taking my usual route and I have my headphones on. Usually when I do, I'm paying attention to shadows, sounds, and looking behind me with one ear always out. At that point, I'm walking up to my bus stop that's on the right side of the sidewalk, and right across on the left side, there's this doorway entrance, but it created like a little nook if you know what I mean. I always wait in that nook. This time, I decided to stand by the road right next to the actual bus stop, and maybe a minute later I turned, and there is this man in the doorway nook, and I ignore it, but position myself so I can see him through my side view. A few seconds later, he then walks up and asks me if I'm taking the bus. I didn't think much of it because I've had that happen a lot, so I just reply with a yes. He then says nothing for a few seconds and then says, "Well, I'll be waiting over here." And then giggles and then backs up into the nook. A few minutes go by and then he walked up to the bench which my back is facing. So I reposition myself again, and in the corner of my eyes, I can see him unzip his bag and slip a pocket knife up his sleeve, and then walks back into the nook. At this point, I decide to move in front of the bus stop along the curb so that my back is facing everything but him. He then sees that and then walks past me and then try to go around the actual bus stop and then walk right up behind me. As he is walking behind me, maybe 4 feet away, I turned around and I stare at him. He pauses, smiles, and then backs up and walks around and goes back into the nook. The bus then shows up. I should have caught the next one, but he insists that I go ahead of him. I get in, and then he follows me to the back of the bus. Again, I should have just sat up front, and he then sits in the row right next to me. We would have been shoulder to shoulder if the aisle wasn't there. I was texting my boyfriend the entire time, so he's already at the bus stop waiting for me. This man followed me to my town, gets off with me, walks with me to the end of the sidewalk, and once he saw my boyfriend, he turned right around and was waiting for the next bus. About a year ago, I was asked if I wanted to play some online MMO by one of my friends. At that time, I didn't know how much trouble a game would be able to cause me. Let me start off by saying that I haven't ever really been a gamer. I wasn't even aware that you could have in-game chats with people. I didn't know what to do, but I wanted to give this online gaming thing a try since my friend said that it was so much fun. I joined a large guild, and some veteran players were kind enough to show me the ropes. And thanks to everyone's help, my character grew and I was enjoying my new gaming experience. One of the best players was a guy called Masaru. He seemed to be a pro at this. He was among the highest in our guild and boasted an armory of rare and difficult to obtain weaponry. He seemed to have all the best stuff, and everybody looked up to him. Masaru seemed to care about me the most though. I don't know if that's because I was the only girl on the team. He helped me raise my level and gifted me loads of cool weaponry and armor that he said that he didn't need anymore. Everyone in the guild was surprisingly close to one another. They regularly had Skype calls and even met up in real life. We used to use Skype to speak to one another while we played. We then chatted in the in-game chat, and we all exchanged email addresses. Most of the members of the guild lived in Kanto and Kansai, and I lived in Hokkaido, so I never attended any of their offline meetings. It was just too far to go, and there were too many meetings for me to attempt to go to any one of them. The distance between Hokkaido and Kansai is about a 24-hour drive, around 1,500 kilometers or 956 miles. So no. I wasn't really careful enough about what I was doing online though. I realize that now. Without thought, I shared personal information about myself with people that I hadn't even met, including members of my guild. Thankfully, I didn't reveal my address or my phone number, and I am really glad that I didn't do that. Now, let me tell you about Masaru. He was a student living in Kansai, and it seemed like every time that I logged in to play, he was ready and waiting for me. He was always eager to play with me, and I would get messages like these from the moment that I logged in. "Ah, I found Mokori!" That's my name, by the way. "What are you doing at the moment? Are you alone?" Maybe not. I guess you could be with someone." One thing that I need to point out is that every time this Masaru guy would send me a message, he would include a certain emoji, and he was known for those emojis, so keep that in mind. He would send these messages to me in a one-on-one chat, excluding other members from the guild. He would send them when we were playing as a group and when we were doing our own solo plays. It was pretty intense. I responded dutifully to begin with, but one day that I was busy hunting with my friend with another group, I didn't have time to reply at that point, so I didn't reply. I just thought to myself, I'll just reply to him later. Then suddenly, he sent that emoji that he uses in the main chat that everyone can see who plays the game. He was supposed to be playing with someone else, but what it looked like he had done was go in search of me to see what I was doing. I know it was only a game, but it felt a little weird that he did that. I should have probably realized that this was an early red flag. Because he then turned up and started talking to me in the game in an open environment that anyone could see, and I felt as if I needed to apologize for not getting back to him in our private chat, and I feel like that was his intention. So I said sorry, and then he replied, "It's okay, Mokori. If you have more fun playing with others than playing with me." And then he posted that emoji that was quickly becoming his calling card. After replying to me, he then logged out, and that was weird because this guy was always logged in. I was shocked by his lack of embarrassment. My friends were shocked too. It was so weird of him to come over and find me and then do this lame sulk quit. And now I realize that that was the point his unusual obsession with me was beginning to be revealed. Every time that I logged in from that day forward, the first message that I would get would be this emoji. The game we played had this friend list built into it, and whenever someone in your friend list appeared online, the list would light up and tell you which part of the map your friend was at. I'm certain that Masaru was sat there waiting for me to log in and monitor my location in the game. I found his actions creepy, and I didn't feel like dealing with him for a while, so I planned on giving the game a break and not logging in for about a week or so. After about a day at best of not logging in, I got an email notification to my phone, and I bet you can guess who those emails were from. They went like this. "Hey, why haven't you logged in for a while?" Followed by that dumb emoji that he sends after every message. He then added, I feel so lonely without Mokori. I guess maybe you hate me, but I don't understand because I like you so much. Okay, at first it was chat and game, then it evolved, and now it was getting close to harassment. I have a private life and I preferred to keep that from the internet, and I wasn't interested in Masaru becoming a part of my private life either. On top of all of this was the fact that Masaru was a college student and I was a working adult. I didn't really have time to play email ping pong with him, but he seemed to have endless hours of free time. The emails were so constant that it was a nightmare. They would come in the middle of the night, in the morning, when I'm at work or on a break. It was just too much that I decided to act, and I decided to respond. Hey, when I'm playing games, I want to have fun with everyone who plays. I don't want to give you special attention. I have no intentions of doing that. I don't have any special feelings for you, and I would like you to refrain from sending me these emails at all hours of the night. It's annoying. I wrote something like that, and in a matter of moments, I had a response from Masaru. It was just that emoji that he used all the time, and nothing more. I sighed at the sight of that, and I locked my phone because I was just so done with it. From that day onwards, I stopped speaking to Masaru, and I stopped playing that online game. Well, I think I might have logged in once or twice more, but I just couldn't enjoy it again. After 3 weeks after I quit playing online, I got an email from someone else that I used to play with, someone from my old guild. They said, I haven't seen you recently. Maybe you got busy? But hey, we all miss you. So if you ever get lonely, log back in again and hang out with us. Masaru seems to be a bit busier these days. He quit university or something. We don't see him log in at all. Masaru quit university? I somehow felt a bit of a bad feeling about that email having said that. I decided that I would log back in when I was free soon. I replied with some words to that effect and then completely forgot about the whole thing. A little about what I was doing at that time is that I was working as a certified instructor. Basically, I visited educational bodies, and back then, I was in charge of free trials. A means for my company to get work, I guess. At the end of each free trial, participants were asked to fill out a survey. It was a simple questionnaire where you can enter your thoughts on the instructor, which is me, what you made of the class and the content, and of course, some personal information about yourself, such as name, address, and etc. We ask our participants to fill this out online via QR code. One day, I was looking through the questionnaires at the office and compiling the results into a data chart. This was part of my job. I was scrolling through the entries, and then I froze. My hand stopped rolling the wheel of my mouse from what I saw. Under impression of the class was Masaru's emoji. Under impression of the instructor was another of Masaru's emoji. Name, Masaru. Address, Kansai. It felt like all the hairs on my body were standing on end when I saw that. He had found me, and he had attended my class. I couldn't believe it. I still cannot believe it. I racked my brain to try to remember incidences when I might have revealed personal details about myself to Masaru. I think that I may have told him that I worked as an instructor in Hokkaido's largest city, but nothing more than that. The bad thing about saying that was I wasn't sure if I said that my office was in the building in front of the station or not. I feel like I might have said that, but I am not too sure. I was so scared that day that I ended work early that day, and instead of going home, I decided to go and see my parents. They lived a good 200 kilometers or 125 miles away, and I stayed with them that night. It helped that I wasn't supposed to work the following day. It was my scheduled day off. In the coming days, I decided to inform my guild friends about Masaru and let them know that I was leaving the game for good. I was told that Masaru had told the guild that he was looking for a job in Hokkaido recently. I knew I needed to do something about him, so I changed my phone number, my email address, and I quit my job. I left Hokkaido after a few months, and I met a guy that I ended up falling in love with, and we got married. Although some of what went down was my fault for sharing too many personal details about myself online, it was truly frightening to discover that someone that I had met online would go to those lengths to track me down. I had no idea that someone who I had met through a game would be capable of acting like that. I guess for some this may not seem that scary written down, but to me, the person who lived it, it was terrifying. Truly terrifying. I don't think that I will ever be as shocked as I was the moment that I saw that online questionnaire filled in by Masaru. That emoji as well, I can never unsee it. And that is the reason why I will never play online games again. So, I'm new to this city for a concert that I'm going to see. It's my first time traveling alone, so I felt like the safest spot for me is just to relax and read some manga in the city library while I wait for my hotel check-in time to come. Well, I guess I picked a bad spot to read at because people kept trying to talk with me, which is fine, but I'm too shy to just tell them to go away. One person sat at a table across from me and asked me where I'm from and who I came with. Obviously, I lied, even though I assumed this person was an older lady. They were wearing a hat and a thick coat, so I just couldn't really tell. I was nicer to them than I should have been, since I assumed this older lady was the chatty type, you know? She says that I look young and have nice hair and stuff, and asked if I'm from around here and where my parents are. Well, just so you know, I'm an adult. Well, turns out that they're not a lady, as I got a closer look at them as he came closer and he then comes to sit next to me. He then asked me for my number, and stupidly, I did give him my actual number. He wrote his number down and his name and asked me to write my name too, and I put a fake name on it. And then he gives me his phone to put in the info and then compares the written to the one that I put on his phone. Again, I gave him my real number but a fake name. I can't bring myself to refuse since none of the librarians were looking our way and he was very big, so I didn't want to make him mad or something. And then he turns to leave and asks when he can call me, and I'm just like, "Oh, just whenever." Obviously, I blocked him when he tried to call later, so I just hope that he assumes that my number was fake too. But as he left, he asked if I had Facebook. I said no, but then he asked if he could take a photo of me. He's like, "Can I take some pictures of you if you don't have a Facebook?" And I nervously laughed and said, no. Anyway, I don't think that I'll visit a big city library again. I'll just go to Barnes and Nobles next time or something. Hi, I don't want to use my real name, so let's just say that I'm Hannah and female. In my line of work, securing deals with large clients was both the challenge and the reward. I'd worked hard to establish myself in the business world, proving my worth time and time again. This time, the stakes were high, as I was assigned to close a significant partnership with a renowned company. The anticipation built up as I prepared my presentation. I was ensuring that every angle was covered and every question anticipated. When the time for the deal came, I walked into the meeting with confidence. I was ready to meet the representative from the other company. He was a man known for his firm negotiations and sharp business acumen. But as the meeting commenced, it became clear that his interest was not in the details of the deal, but rather in me. Instead of engaging in the business proposal, he diverted the conversation to my career, questioning how a woman like me had risen to such a position. His comment carried a weight that pressed down on me. I felt the sting of his words, as they implied that my presence here was unexpected, perhaps undeserved. So I asked for clarification. My tone was steady, yet demanding respect. He then backtracked, trying to paint his remarks as a compliment about my youth and my achievements. But I wasn't about to let it slide. I pressed on, and I was challenging the notion that my gender and age should be a surprise in this setting. His response was jarring, though. He suggested that a woman's primary role was to have children, as if my career was somehow secondary, like an afterthought. The mix of anger and disbelief surged within me, and I saw no reason to continue the charade of a meeting. With my decision firm, I gathered my things and I just left, leaving behind not just the potential deal, but also his outdated mindset. Back at the office, I relayed the experience to my superiors, and predictably, they were less concerned with the nature of his comments and more focused on the lost opportunity. Their criticism came swiftly. They were scolding me for letting my personal feelings sabotage a valuable partnership. The situation weighed heavily on me for the rest of the day. Later on, as I was wrapping up my work, my office phone rang. On the other end was the man from the meeting. He apologized and he acknowledged his unprofessional behavior earlier at our meeting. He expressed a desire to continue discussions about the deal, and he then invited me to a follow-up meeting that night. Despite my lingering resentment for him, the possibility of salvaging the situation led me to agree. So I arrived at the office after hours. The quietness of the place felt different, almost unsettling. The building seemed deserted except for him. He greeted me with a warmer demeanor, seemingly intent on making amends. As we began to talk, his focus appeared more sincere. Yet, something about his demeanor was off. I couldn't quite point out why. But I then noticed that he started edging closer, his body language shifting from professional to intrusive to downright creepy. He placed a hand on my shoulder, and it was a very unwelcome gesture that I promptly removed. I reminded him of the boundaries that we were to maintain, and he seemed taken aback by my reaction, but I held my ground. And soon after, he made another attempt, resting his hand on my thigh. I pushed him away. I rose from my seat with the intent to leave, but before I could make my escape, he seized me with sudden aggression and he was pinning me to the ground. Panic surged as I screamed, and his voice hissing at me to be quiet. In the midst of my struggle, the sound of another voice cut through the chaos. It was the janitor, an unexpected savior of mine. He demanded that the man let me go, and his intervention was enough to break the hold, allowing me to scramble to my feet and take refuge behind him. The businessman, the creep, was furious. He attempted to threaten the janitor, claiming that he had the power to cost him his job. But the janitor remained steadfast, refusing to be intimidated by this pervert. The janitor looked strong, a bit old. He could be around my dad's age. That's probably why he saved me without any second thoughts. he probably sees his daughter in me. He then escorted me quickly out of the building, ensuring that I reached my car safely. The aftermath of the incident was a whirlwind of emotions and formalities. I pressed charges, of course. I was determined to seek justice for the horrible experience that I've had. The creep was suspended pending investigation, but doubt lingered in my mind. Would he really face the consequences of his actions? Or would the system fail to hold him accountable? I don't know. I can only hope for the best. As I returned to work, I carried the scars of the experience with me. This incident, though harrowing, had not broken my spirit. Instead, it strengthened my resolve to succeed more, not just for myself, but for all women who face similar battles in their lives. I'll come back if there are any updates to let you guys know, but that's it for now. So everyone, please, stay safe. A few minutes ago, I was just surfing in Omegle. I added chatting as the keyword for the common interest thing. A guy then appeared. He was skinny in a healthy way, with blonde hair up to his neck. He had a sharp jawline too. I started by asking how his day. He said it's nice, and then he asked for a favor. He talked very fast. He said that his online Skype friend isn't picking up his calls, that he has been calling her for the past 6 days. So, he asked me to call her, and then he started to say her name, or ID, I don't know. I've never used Skype before, and then he spelled it. The name starts with Sunny. I didn't give attention to the name thing fully because all the while I was asking him to stop. He said that she's a popular girl and that they were good friends. I said to him that maybe she's avoiding him and just to let her go. And then he started to act very strangely. He started to cry a bit, but like the tears didn't come out, but his face turned a bit sorrowful. He said that someone might have stolen her Skype account and asked me to call and confirm that that was the case, where, meanwhile, he will stay in Omegle. I again said that she's avoiding and things like that. He added a pint of rage to his sorrow face and then yelled, "No, she can't avoid me. She will not. I donated $1,000. She dare not. I'm going to call again and again, and I'm sure it's an identity theft." He said these words in a threatening way and squeezed his mic a little bit. At this point, I got terrified and I placed my fingers near the escape button, and I was ready to disconnect. Before doing it, I said to him that he's crazy and that he's a psychopath. He then made a creepy grin and said, "That's called bait." And then he disconnected the call. This ain't RBI to ask things, but why did he say the last thing? Omegle can't be hacked. Only the location can be pulled out. But that's also useless in this case. And I don't know why he said bait. And here's the riddle for this video. Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate it. I would also like to give some extra love to my Patreon members, my channel members, and also my tippers. Thank you so much. If you would like to extend a little bit more support for the channel, don't forget to leave a like and a comment down below. If you would like to become a Patreon member, a channel member, a tipper, or even to buy merch, check out the links in the description below. Again, thank you. And I hope you stay scared, because your fear feeds me.